Okay, so I'm going to talk to myself because I forgot to hit record on our Zoom meeting this morning. Basically, what we're talking about today is stretching and shrinking of graphs. So making that original graph a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than the original. So if you take a look at example number one, I graphed those two graphs for you. The first graph that you see, the f of x, is in that purple line right here. So that's where the graph started. Then it says that we stretch the graph by a factor of 3. That's what the 3 outside of that square root sign means. Whenever it's outside, it means that you stretched or shrunk it based on a certain factor. So if you have a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're making it bigger. If you have a fraction, 1/2, 1/3, 1/5, 1/6, whatever, you're making it smaller. Okay, so that's the basics. Whole number means getting bigger. A fraction means getting smaller. So what happened was I stretched this graph by a factor of 3, and that's the red graph that you see here. So if you look at the different coordinates, the first coordinate was 1, 1, and I moved it to 1, 3. The second coordinate was 4, 2, and I changed it to 4, 6 when I stretched it. So they're asking us in part A and part B what actually happened. So when they're asking you to describe a graph or what happened, they're basically wanting you to pretend that the person you're describing it to is blind. They can't see the graph. So you want to use those adjectives to really give a picture of what's going on. So that purple graph that we started with changed by making the red graph bigger. So I want to say something to that effect. I want to say the second graph, or the graph of g of x, changes or moves. And you can say words like bigger, stretched, taller, those all descriptive words. You could also, if you're going the other way, say smaller, shrinking, tinier, shorter. Any of those words will work, okay? And I'm going to change my font to green here. So when you do your notes for yourself, you're going to write everything that I write in green because I am going to highlight some stuff in a minute here. And I don't care necessarily that you highlight. Okay, so then the second part says, what is the rule? Well, if I think about those coordinates, I went from 1, 1 to 1, 3. And then I went from 4, 2 to 4, 6. The y coordinate is the only part that is changing. So the rule is that you take whatever the y coordinate is and you multiply it by what you're stretching or shrinking by. So we're going to put that into words here. We're going to keep the x coordinate the same and multiply the y coordinate by the growth or the shrink. Okay, so we're going to practice that skill, multiplying the y coordinate by growing or shrinking, in example number 2. So in example number 2, they give us a list of x values. Now the x values, because they stay the same, literally don't change, okay? They are going to change for the y value, which is what you see in the parent function. So this pair of numbers right here that you see, that's the original. The x values and the y values, those are all coordinates. Those would be something like this, okay? We are going to take the y coordinates, which I'm going to highlight for you, and we are going to multiply them by the factor of 2, which is the number that I see out in front. They are growing this graph or stretching this graph by a factor of 2. So everything I see in the y column, I'm going to multiply by 2. 0 times 2 is 2. Oops, let me change to green. 1 times 2 is 2. I'm sorry, 0 times 2 is not 2, it's 0. I'll learn how to multiply. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. So again, the only thing that we're really learning about today is how to use that to multiply. The growth factor, whether you're using a fraction or a whole number, gets multiplied by whatever's in the y column. That's really all that's changing today, okay? So go ahead and hand in those notes. I'm sorry that I forgot to hit record on our Zoom session. The classwork did get recorded because I realized it about halfway through, so they are a little bit separate today, which is no big deal because I'll just post them in the right spots. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.